Today's topic is, should you buy a home or rent? Now, you might have heard people say things like, oh, renting is just a waste of money, or why pay the landlord's mortgage when you can buy a house yourself? In this video, I'll be doing a comparison between buying a house and renting. So there are many factors that influence whether you buy or rent, and we'll be going over the advantages and disadvantages of each. And I'll be plugging in some numbers to see if you can actually make money by only renting and investing. Now, there is a common misconception that if you rent, you are just throwing money away. Now, that is not entirely true, because when you rent, you are renting for a space to live. And when you are buying a house, you're essentially renting money from the bank. So in both situations, you are still renting for something. First up, let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of buying a house. So the advantages include you can use your Kiwi Saver to withdraw everything apart from $1,000, and you can also get a first home grant. So check with your bank and mortgage provider for details on that front. And you have a greater privacy and freedom, and you don't have to worry about being removed by a landlord. House prices also tends to rise faster than your average wage in most developed countries. And you have the power of leverage, which means that if you put down a down payment of 20% of the value of the house, your whole house appreciates in value if the house price goes up. Mortgage payments also tend to stay fairly consistent, while rent can drastically increase. And buying a house forces you to save and have good financial habits. Now, for the disadvantages of buying a house, there's quite a high down payment amount, and you're pretty much putting all your eggs in one basket. So you're not very diversified. So when a natural disaster strikes, the housing market might tank as well. And most people do not buy a house for the purpose of investment in mind. So they might not be looking for houses that have great potential to appreciate in value. You're also tied down to a large amount, which means that there's a lot less flexibility, and you have to worry about maintenance, taxes, and insurance. So next up, let's look at renting. So the advantage of renting is that renting is all about lifestyle. There are many interesting places in the world that you can live in. You can have the convenience of living really close to work, and you can easily upgrade and downgrade where you live depending on your income situation. And there is a relatively low down payment compared to buying a house. You can also diversify your assets by using the money to invest in portfolios of index funds. And your assets are more liquid, so you can sell off your assets if you actually need the money. Some disadvantages of renting include the rent increases at a higher rate than most mortgages. And there seems to be an underlying social stigma that if you are renting, you are in a lower socioeconomic group compared to someone that's bought a house. Now, quite often people just purchase houses just to show off their wealth and success. And renting might not be as easy if you have a family, since it might be tricky to relocate younger family members from their school and their friends. And you need to have the self-discipline of not just spending everything. And if you actually want to make money, you still need to invest what you have in surplus. Let's now plug in some numbers to see the different net worth that you could get from buying or renting. Here we are comparing two people. We have Bill the buyer and Roger the renter. I used a few different buying versus renting calculators to try find the one that would really compare the opportunity cost of both options. Now, there are many calculators that compared the monthly cost, but doesn't include the benefit of investing the down payment for the mortgage. So I used a combination of multiple calculators to get my final result. To start off, I looked at the median price of housing in New Zealand. The median house price in New Zealand, according to the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand, is at $615,000 in January 2020. But for a first home, our buyer Bill decides to buy a small 2-bedroom house at $450,000 with 20% down payment. Both Bill the buyer and Roger the renter start off with $90,000 in savings, and Bill spent that on down payment for the house, and Roger decides to invest that money. By plugging in the number into the mortgage calculator, we have $450,000 home price, 20% down payment, loan term at 30 years, 4% interest rate, 1% tax, 0.3% house insurance, and 1% other costs, which include maintenance and utility cost. And I had the utility maintenance costs increase at 2% per year. Each month, Bill the buyer would pay around $2,581. Now let's go back to the comparison chart. Roger rents a similar 2-bedroom house at a price of $2,000 per month, and he invests the $90,000 in savings that he had and an extra $580 per month into an index fund at around 8% return per year. So this is to equalize the different spending between Roger and Bill. If we use the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand's data of median house prices in New Zealand over the past 20 years, we can see that the price increased from $170,000 to $615,000 over the past 20 years. So if we plug that into the interest calculator, we could work out that the New Zealand house price has a massive growth of 6.5% per year over the last 20 years, which is no wonder why everyone wants to invest in properties in New Zealand. Assuming the same growth in housing price over 30 years, Bill would end up with a house worth a massive $2.9 million. Now, this is a huge assumption because a growth of 6.5% in housing price is very unusual in most countries. And how much would Roger the renter end up after all his investments? Assuming his income would increase as well as his rent goes up, and he keeps up his contribution to his portfolio over the years, Roger would end up with $1.7 million, which is still a massive amount, but nowhere near the $2.9 million Bill's house is worth. So buying a house is the better option, right? Well, it's not as simple as that. If the appreciation of housing price in New Zealand becomes more in line with other countries at 3.5%, Bill will end up with a house after 30 years worth $1.2 million, which is less than Roger's $1.7 million from investing. Not only that, let me ask you a question. How many people do you know that stayed in one place for the entire 30 years mortgage term? Not that many, I would think. The average US household spend 13 years in a house. And whenever you buy or sell a house, you are paying a commission to the real estate agents and lawyers. And that could be several $1,000s all the way up to 10% cost of the property itself. And this would take a large chunk of whatever value that you have gained from the property. So is there any way to tip the scale back towards the buyers? Well, of course there is. There are a few house hacks to help you get more from your home purchase. So you can rent out your spare room or sleep out to get some extra cash. And you can make extra repayments to pay out your mortgage faster. And if you are financially able, you can even invest in the share market after making your mortgage payments. There's also a saying that profit is made when you buy, not when you sell. This basically means that you should look for properties that are either in good locations or undervalued, that have a chance of appreciation in value. All these will serve to help you pay off your mortgage even faster and get you further ahead. So the age-old question of whether it is better to buy or rent really depends on many factors. And one of the main one is the appreciation rate of properties. So New Zealand currently has one of the highest housing appreciation rates, but that might not last forever. So just be extra aware, because investing in properties purely for capital gains is extremely risky. And there might be natural disasters or maybe a financial crisis that will greatly affect the market. So let me know where you stand in the buying versus renting debate, and I will see you in the next video.